Welcome back to We Married the Family podcast series, where I explore the realities of life with in-laws. I'm Dr. Nadia, a counselling psychologist and founder of We Married the Family, an international support group and coaching program for daughters-in-law. Today's episode is a confession episode. In these segments, you send in your confessions and I explore them from a cultural and a psychological lens. Today's confession of a daughter-in-law reads, "Since I got married, I feel like I have lost myself. I don't know who I am anymore." I want to start off by saying that this is a very common experience for daughters-in-law, and I'll go into some of the reasons why in a second, but also that this is such a difficult state to be in. It can be frustrating, enraging, sad, and confusing. It's like a disorientation, as well as the difficulty of being in this disoriented place. It also brings with it an opportunity to reorient yourself in a way that you might never have done before. Being in this state can also be filled with grief, so be really kind and compassionate with yourself because it is a loss. There might be a loss of multiple things along with the loss of self, including time, hopes and dreams, a different life, happiness, love, friendships. Chances are this daughter-in-law, like many others, might be expected to change her identity in order to fit in with the family. So her true self is overlooked by other people. Maybe there's not much space for her authenticity, for her choices. Other people might be making decisions for her. And she might be too anxious or fearful to take a more active role. It gets really suffocating and stifling. And all of this leads to a loss of autonomy, which leads to a loss of self. Even as we begin this exploration, you can see that a loss of self isn't just an individual issue. The individual and the environment, including others in that environment, are always relating to one another and influencing one another. Think about how a child develops a sense of self and gets to know who they are. They feed off those around them and their environment. They respond to their parents. For example, a child who received conditional love based on how helpful he or she is to the parents might go on to develop more selfless, people-pleasing traits in adulthood. They might think, if I'm good to others, if I'm useful to others, then they will love me. So into adulthood, people who relate with this individual might see this culturally acceptable self instead of the true self underneath. And there might not even really be a defined sense of self underneath because the child was never encouraged to be themselves. So how do they know who they are? I use this as an example here because I see it a lot with daughter-in-laws who have come from families where they were only accepted and loved if they did what was expected of them. If this daughter-in-law has a similar experience to what I've been talking about, she would already have gone into marriage with little awareness and little definition of who she is in the first place. So she walks in quite blank with open arms in a state where she's available to receive other people's projections and their expectations. This also makes her vulnerable to abuse because without a defined sense of self, she will also not have healthy boundaries. She's likely to struggle with assertiveness and self-esteem issues. I use this as an example as well because oftentimes a woman will feel that she has regressed into a younger state when living with in-laws. And I often describe that it can sometimes feel like you're back at school. Oftentimes, even when a daughter-in-law does know who she is, married life can change her. If she's living with in-laws or if there's abuse occurring, she will be impacted. Women I've worked with will say things like, "I look back and I don't even know who I was," or "I just became this other person," or "I don't even recognize myself anymore." Sometimes the things you would never expect to happen do happen. You might think, when I get married, I'm going to carry on working, I'm going to have good relations with my in-laws, I'll just be myself, I'll balance work, family, social life. But as time ticks along after marriage, this same woman might have stopped being her decisive and spontaneous self. She might still be working, but not feel any joy in that work anymore. She might struggle in her relationships. She might now be consumed with family roles and feel withdrawn from family and friends and feel isolated. These cultural expectations can erode a person's individual identity. Within these expectations and responsibilities, she might also be experiencing something called role overload. This is where a person takes on too many roles without enough time or resources. You could be a wife, a daughter-in-law, a mother, a caregiver, and a teacher or doctor or whatever you do for work. And when you're juggling all of these roles, you inevitably are not going to have time for yourself and possibly experience burnout. Obviously, you can and should do things for others from a place that's aligned to who you are. But the mistake is when we are just so outward facing that we sacrifice ourselves. For some women, you might even use these roles as an excuse or distraction to avoid yourself, to avoid the pain of facing a self that is barely visible. I always encourage women to stay connected to the people and things that you had in your life before you got married. Even if you've moved away, create a new circle very early on, because these other relationships act like an anchor to who you are, and it's how you stay connected to yourself. I often do an exercise with women where we explore who she was before she got married. We delve into how she showed up in relationships with her family, her friends, even her partner. We think about the things she used to do with her time, things she used to enjoy, because all of these are what made her who she was. And it might be that she reconnects to some of these people, activities, or qualities again. But this isn't to go back to being that person fully, because that's a different version. We look back so that we can move forward, because the experiences you've had in the process of losing yourself are also going to add something different to who you're now becoming. Who you are right now will be different to who you were. And you also need to allow yourself to become different going forward as you carve out your renewed self. And there is no easy way to do it. You can start off easy, you can start off small, start off with what's manageable. But this journey is going to come with discomfort. And no one else can do it for you. You have to start carving that time out for yourself. A couple of women in the group the other week shared a change they were making. They were completely different, and they're both great examples of doing what works for you in your situation. One of them said she's cutting down a day of work and making that a day just for her, where she'll prioritize herself, do things that she enjoys, and work on self-improvement. Another woman shared that she will start going on a 10-15 minute walk a few times a week. It felt doable, but still had its challenges. Maybe for you it will look like getting up early to pray and sit in the silence of the dawn. It could be booking onto local events about art, history, politics, comedy shows, literature, music. You might go out, get your hair done, your nails done, go for brunch, go and see friends that you haven't seen for years. You can just go out and try different things. Don't be afraid to experiment and push your own boundaries. Try something new or reconnect with old passions like we mentioned earlier. I know the struggles of getting out of the house when you're living with in-laws, but whatever you choose doesn't need to be shared with anyone. It doesn't have to take up much time. Start off small and keep going with it. It does get easier over time. One of the benefits of going on this journey is that you'll actually be bringing a more real version of you to your relationships. And that might come with some pushback, but what price are you going to pay? Are you going to continue to lose yourself, or are you going to be okay with disappointing some people? Either way, there is a cost, but I hope you would not pay the price of your own self, because it's your life. And you need to stop giving it away to other people, especially if those are people who you would not even choose to be around. I would hope that for most women a good balance can be found, but you just need to start by making the decision to come back to who you are. Before we end, I want to do a short guided reflection to help you reconnect with yourself. For some of you, it might be painful. For others, it might bring a realization or some inner strength, or it could be a mixture. Just really let yourself feel into it. Take yourself somewhere comfortable and quiet, and close your eyes. And picture yourself before marriage. What were the things that made you smile? What gave you energy? Now imagine yourself holding a small light in the palm of your hands. This light represents your true self. Even if it's dim, it's still there. And with each breath, you see the light growing bigger and brighter. This is a reminder that your true self is with you and ready to grow. If you've benefited from today's episode, do like, comment, share, and subscribe. If you've been affected by anything discussed in today's episode, do seek the support that you need. You can join my daughter-in-law's membership group via the link below, or book in for one-to-one therapy with myself or another therapist.